Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regular scheduled Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission. We'll open up the meeting today. Roll call.
Commissioner Brown, Carter, Harris,
Here.
Herr,
Here.
Rodriguez, here, Vice Chairman Little,
Present.
Chairman Vieira. We have a quorum.
Today we have Gabriel Rule here for our invocation. Everyone stand, please.
I would like to say to all of you, just thank you for what you do and for the opportunity to be with you this morning. Let's have prayer and we'll begin our meeting. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much, Lord, for today, and we're reminded that today is your gift to us, and we pray that you give us wisdom, that we would steward today in a way that pleases and honors you. And I pray, Lord, for these in this room, in this meeting, and God, I pray that you would give them wisdom and favor. Lord, we're so thankful for all that they do for our city and for our safety. And Lord, we pray that you'd bless this meeting. May it be profitable. Lord, may it be productive. We pray that you'd give wisdom in every decision that is made, that it would serve our city well, providing a safe place for every member of our community to live and to serve you. Lord, we thank you for this day, and we pray your blessings upon this meeting. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Howard?
Everyone put their hand over their hearts and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Presentations. Public business from the floor on agendized items. Citizens who would like to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any item, may do so when it is being considered by the commission. Please complete a speaker card, and you would like to discuss. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Consent calendar. Has the commissioners had a chance to review the consent calendar? We have a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Passed 4-0. Okay. NBA 1, new business. The adoption of the draft, right, Jocelyn, as far as the alcohol ordinance?
Yes, at the February 23rd regular city council meeting, we were directed to look at our existing regulations and see whether we could come up with some additional regulations that would restrict the minimum size in terms of volume or quantity the alcoholic beverages can be sold for off-site consumption. So we took a look at the existing conditions that are imposed on more recently established liquor stores and mini marts and so forth that are operating under a conditional use permit. And in looking at those, we realized that older stores that are essentially grandfathered in, they're called deemed approved liquor stores, are not operating under CUP conditions. And therefore, we don't have any real control over how they operate. We have found that there are numerous public nuisance activities and conditions that we're noticing are happening at some of these standalone liquor stores and mini marts, specifically things like loitering in the parking lot, drinking in public urination, littering, all of that kind of behavior that tends to be associated with persons buying a single can of beer, a single can of malt liquor, a smaller airplane bottle size of liquor, and just consuming it there in the parking lot. So in an effort to try to limit that kind of nuisance activity that is a blight on the neighborhoods in which those stores are located, we're proposing amending the general business license ordinance to establish a new section to Chapter 5.04 of the Municipal Code that establishes or would establish operational requirements for certain types of businesses. And the first section that we have in place is specifically limited to alcoholic beverage establishments that sell for off-site consumption. I'm going to let Lee give you a little background information on some of our stores here in town that are considered deemed approved, and some of the problems that we've experienced, and then we can come back and look at the particulars of the ordinance.
So we ran a query on how many business licenses we had as it related to those type of businesses that Jocelyn's speaking about as it relates to no conditional use permit that's in existence. So as of this time of running this report, there were 47 of alcohol-related businesses that are operating within the city of Lancaster with no CUP. Of those, we randomly picked 11 of them, just randomly, of the 47. And of those 11, those resulted in 235 calls for service for the Sheriff's Department. And those calls ranged, just as Jocelyn spoke, as related to nuisance issues, loitering in the parking lot, on-premise use of alcohol, those type of things. Obviously, just based on those 235 calls, that's a significant amount of resources that are being utilized to deal with those type of businesses as it relates to our ability to be able to put certain conditions in place. That's tens of thousands of dollars in resource dollars that are being utilized to police those businesses.
So the draft ordinance, I believe you got a copy when the agenda was sent out to you last week, proposes setting some minimum limit, some minimum sizes in terms of quantity and volume of various alcoholic beverages, and would prohibit liquor store and mini mart owners from allowing persons to purchase anything less than those minimum quantities and volumes. It's pretty straightforward. It mirrors quite a bit the conditions that are set forth in the CUP for more recent stores. And it does carve out some exemptions for brewery-type places, wineries, for large, like Bevmo, Costco, those kinds of places that don't engender that kind of pattern of walking in, buying a single thing, hanging out in the parking lot and consuming it. Those behaviors don't tend to happen at the larger stores. So that's the basic model for it. At the agenda review for Planning Commission earlier this week, there were some questions concerning why the quantities, why the volumes that we put in the draft ordinance. We gave you a printout of just some basic research we did on the various sizes and quantities of different kinds of alcoholic beverages that are available for sale. We certainly would be interested in hearing whatever suggestions you might have in terms of changing the limits that we've set in the draft ordinance. And any comments or questions we'd be interested in hearing.
And for clarity, I need to point out that that was over a 12-month period. So that was for the last 12 months, those calls for service.
I'm in favor of the ordinance, but I'm kind of torn. As a business owner, the first thing that comes to my mind is how many dollars are we taking away from these establishments that actually make, I'm sure, more money on individual sale for a bottle of beer. The other thing that I question is wine. I mean, it's a situation where the cheap wine they do the same thing with. So are we going to eliminate, I mean, by getting rid of the single beer sales, are we trying to eliminate them from gathering around the liquor store to eliminate this kind of activity? Because eliminating just a single beer, I'm not so sure that's going to eliminate them being there. They're there for the single cigarettes. They're there just to hang out. They probably have some illegal activity going on. So that's one of the things I'm concerned about.
And just for the sake of argument, typically what happens as we see individuals around that the aggressive panhandling, those type of situations that are occurring in some of our centers, is when that individual obtains enough money to buy a single purchase of alcohol, a single serving of alcohol, they will purchase that and consume it on the premises. Then again, panhandle, again, for more money to, again, go back into the location and do the same thing over and over repetitively. The other issue is that we've actually taken a position with the Sheriff's Department that we're working closely with some of these businesses that if you're knowingly serving someone who's a chronic alcoholic, okay, that continually comes in your business and purchases alcohol, that you can be guilty of a crime for selling to them. So there's other ways to manage this that we're currently trying to do now, but that's typically what the case is. And then we're having the same issues as it relates to on-site recycling centers, as it relates to those single sales, all kinds of things that are going on.
And I can tell you that at one liquor store here nearby, I've actually prosecuted two of the guys who hang out in the parking lot on a regular basis. One of them failed to appear at the arraignment, and there's a warrant out for him, but who's going to pick him up? I mean, what's going to happen? Nothing. The other one is on probation, and he's got a stay-away order from the liquor store, but I don't know if he's abiding by it. At a certain point, you can only do so much with the individuals who are chronic alcoholics and are just hanging out in a parking lot drinking. At a certain point, you have to put it back on the business owner who needs to responsibly operate his or her business. There are state laws under the Business and Professions Code. You're supposed to put up signage about not loitering in the parking lot. You're supposed to do something to ensure that that occurs or does not occur. And so for those stores where we're not seeing that there's any kind of control being exhibited over their patrons, this is one way that we're proposing we might be able to get a handle on that.
As those, over that 12-month period, Mr. Drico, we had 11. How many of those 11 facilities were liquor stores?
Probably 70% of those.
70%. So it seems that obviously those ones that we have over 51%, 50-something percent, or whatever that percentage may be as far as liquor sales, seems to be an issue.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the thing is, and again, that's 11 random samples, okay? I just went through the list just based on locations. I have personal knowledge of where they are in the area and ran that. And again, that's a significant number of calls over a 12-month period just to 11 businesses, okay? And again,
that's huge.
Now, there's some other issues that occur along with those businesses. They're not all alcohol-related, but the largest percentage of those calls are alcohol-related issues.
I kind of believe, like Commissioner Harris was saying, is that it seems that some of these businesses I've seen and I've looked at businesses that have part of their sales, and I'm concerned on how we limit convenience stores and mini markets, and that's always been an issue with me as far as who can sell, what can sell, and condition. What I understand from this is that we're trying to eliminate those singles, which I'm fully agree upon, unless it's sold in a packaged product. Okay, and then secondly is that what I understand too is that if this is adopted and moved forward, is that are we stopping? I see in here there's a notation as far as how do we mandate as far as wine growers, the beer manufacturer who sell the singles now from their location, are they going to be incorporated in this thing too? No. So that's a completely separate issue.
They're exempted out, expressly exempted out. Basically, this ordinance applies to Type 20 and Type 21 licenses, ABC licenses.
I'm really struggling with the idea of, one of the things I do is I'm a business broker. I've sold several businesses, and you start taking away a business owner's opportunity to make money and without giving them a chance to correct the action. In other words, I would be more in favor of, once we receive 5 calls to this location in a 60-day period, then we're going to implement this rule. But to do a blanket one, and you have some of them out there that don't allow this activity, they sell the singles, it's very profitable for them, but they control the parameter of their business.
I'll tell you one option, and I'm just going to throw it out there. When we revised the business license chapter several months back, the commission looked at that and approved it, recommended it to the city council. One of the things that we added to that chapter was the authority for the city to impose conditions on a business license. If there's concern about a global application of this prohibition, that is something that you could consider recommending to council in lieu of this, for the city to use the condition authority to target those stores where we know that we're seeing bad actors. That's an option.
So what I understand is that if a business license is coming up for renewal, that these conditions can be set forth on a grandfathered-in facility?
We can impose conditions on any business license that's separate and apart from whether it's a deemed approved liquor store or one operating under a CUP. The business license track, if you will, is separate and apart from any land use authorities.
Would that have effect on a facility that has a stellar track record?
I think where you're going here is, and it may make a lot of sense, is a modification depending on how we apply the rule. So if you want to set a standard, make a recommendation for the council to either approve or disapprove is well within your purview. And I understand where you're coming from on both sides of the fence here. I think the thing is we're trying to address some of these issues already. We have some chronic issues that maybe we'll just address through our chronic nuisance type setting or enforcement. But at the same time, it's good for us to have conditional use for sales of this type of issues. And I think that's more of a wide-ranging thing. So a lot of these establishments were in place long before the city even incorporated. Okay, and we all know that because we've been here a long time. But I'm saying at the point we need to have some structure or regulation. These businesses change hands, and even though we vet individuals through our new business licensing process that we've done through the Criminal Justice Commission and made recommendation to the council, I think it's good sense for us to go through that process. And that conditional use issue is like we have with many locations here, is not that restrictive. Okay, so depending on what you believe is the appropriate way to apply it. So if there's modification that you see is based on that, let's have that discussion. And then, of course, you can decide as a commission what your recommendation should be to council.
And I'll just add, if your thinking is to go the condition route rather than the global application of the prohibition, it doesn't need to wait until the renewal period to impose conditions. It would be similar to if we were going to suspend or revoke a business license. We send a letter telling the licensee that we intend to take this action. They have due process rights. They have the right to appeal that. We would inform them what the proposed conditions would be. If they timely appeal, we'd have a hearing before an independent hearing officer, and those proposed conditions would either be upheld or rejected. So we don't, in going down that track, we wouldn't unilaterally be allowed to impose these without the business owner having an opportunity to argue why he or she should not have those conditions imposed.
What do you guys think? I mean, I'm looking at this and I hear what you're saying, is that I believe that the direction of the city and the city council has made it perfectly clear that they want to take direction, which I agree on singles, and I think it's a hard thing. But I also hear what you're saying as far as businesses that apply to, part of their business and part of their sales and everything else.
Well, like they said, I mean, if we were able to revise it and tweak it to where it was for chronic abusers, that would eliminate the global situation for all business owners that sold singles.
Vice Mayor Christ?
At some point, you're going to have to take a look at the responsibility of the business owner. So if you have him, there's 5 calls there, what's going to take place after that is the businesses just won't call anymore. And then you have a bigger problem, or a potentially bigger problem. And those businesses that sell the singles, it's been shown, the Sheriff's Department is showing us, that it is the singles that are the main cause of the problems. So the business owners, in my opinion, have to take responsibility. They can't perpetuate the problem onto the community because they need to make a profit. They need to, the entire community is paying for the $40 or $50 that they make a year or a month on this, particular thing. You have to look at the bigger problem, number one, if we impose a problem with them calling us, they'll just refuse to call. Then you're going to have a bigger problem in the parking lots. You're going to, if you don't do it with just singles, then, you know, the sheriff department has shown us that's the problem. They sit outside, they panhandle. They panhandled enough till they can go buy something else with the money that they've received. So we just need to eliminate that problem, and it helps the entire community. That's what we're here for, to help the entire community, not just protect one individual that's perpetuating his problem onto all of us. So that would be my views of that. And there's other things that we can do that someone that would want to do this can pay a higher fee for a permit. So if they want to sell singles or we can't get to them through our process as far as eliminating singles, they can pay a higher business fee for it to compensate for the problem. But it is, you can't sell singles and create the problem for that entire community.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree to a large degree, to a large portion. I'm more in favor of them paying extra to have that capability. I mean, when I'm listening to this and I think about it, we're talking about these people that hang out, they panhandle to buy a beer. Okay? Has anyone thought about the fact they're just going to hang out a little bit longer to get a six-pack? I mean, they're not going to go anywhere. They're just going to hang out longer and work together to get a six-pack.
Well, I think that's one of the things that the vice mayor was just referring to, that maybe this should fall on the track of the property owner, is that they were going to have to be able to police their own property. I mean, we all have business patrons that have businesses that sell alcoholic beverages, and it's up to them to police it, you know, no matter which direction they go, you know. So, I mean, if they have panhandlers, if they have people asking for whatever it may be, the ones that I've dealt with know that it falls on them. The ones that want to point the finger at the city and say, this is what you should be doing, this is what you shouldn't be doing, is a concern, you know. And yet the city sat back and said, listen, we're coming up with ideas, and yet on the same token, we should be looking at it as a whole, that sooner or later, like the vice mayor was saying, it comes down on the shoulders of business owners. Is that they have to go with the times. They have to understand in a growing community that there's things that grow with us, and that's issues with homeless, with panhandling, whatever it may be, and we rely on the sheriff's department, all law enforcement, and they can only do so much. We see the area that you cover, so I mean, I hear what you're saying. You know,
I'm just not sure it's going to be as effective as we'd like for it to be, and at the same time, we're crippling business owners, but we're not really curing the problem if they're going to continue to hang out. And I guess there's no kind of study we can do to see what would happen if we did singles, or maybe do a trial basis, because these people have nowhere else to go. So they're gonna improvise with what we do.
I think this is a bigger picture than what the city is trying to do. They will have a place to go if our assessment district passes. So they will have a place to go. We're trying to, and the studies have already been done. The Costco's, the large shopping centers, they don't have this problem because they don't sell those individual singles.
Right.
They don't sell the individual problems, and they have the security that it takes to do that. So unless we implement security on the liquor stores and all these other things, it's a lot easier and a lot more economical for the business owner just for us to implement it and say don't sell singles anymore.
Okay. I mean, that's logical, and I can understand that. I have my reservations, but I see where you're going with it.
But I hear both sides of the story, but I'm 100% in favor on this ordinance because that single bottle is sold from the liquor store or mini market, whatever you call it, is going to get open on the street or in the car. That's going to be, problem.
Well said.
Yeah.
with that, any other discussion or anything? So do we need something to push this through with the, to make this a recommendation to the Lancaster City Council? Jocelyn?
if somebody wanted to make a motion to recommend it to City Council in its current form.
I'll make that recommendation.
Okay, do we have a second? Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, before we vote, any other discussion on it? Is there anything that,
Well, the only other thing I would add is, are we in favor, well, according to what Mr. Herr says, that wouldn't necessarily change anything. I was going to say, are we in favor of imposing a fee to be able to sell singles, or do we not want that option at all? I mean, that's something that Vice Mayor brought up as an alternative. Is that something that we're interested in doing, or are we just in favor of just no singles?
No. You know, why they give them a second chance if we want to get rid of a problem?
I agree.
Okay.
Cut it.
I think I agree too that singles to me seem to be an issue. And looking at the direction the city has given us and the city has taken, I just think it's, as much as I hate to say it, like you said, businesses that we've dealt with, and you in particular,
Right.
it's a tough call, And if we made a recommendation that possibly they pay a higher fee, is that going to be?
They're just going to pay the higher fee.
Pay a higher fee?
Yeah, I mean, that's just going to bring more money into the coffer, but it's not going to do anything for our
It's
calls.
still going to tax our local law
Right.
enforcement and everything else on taking calls, so. Okay, with that said, we have a first and a second. Recommendation passes 4-0. NB2, regarding potential medical or potential marijuana regulations. Excuse me.
Thank Vice Chairman Little. This is the ongoing discussion to make us all experts on everything that has to do with marijuana dispensaries and cultivation of marijuana by the time we're done and get to November. The reality of this is we've provided information and some information today as well for your expertise to somewhat dispute some of the claims that are made, also as well as just advise you where the state's at right now from the seed to sale issue and what kind of problems that may present. I think one of them is good for especially the UC Davis health system study, that the heavy and persistent use of pot is linked to economic and social problems at midlife, and that's a fairly credible study. There's also several other studies that are out there from reputable organizations talking about what the prolonged use of marijuana and causation issues are to health. I think another one that's significant is talking about some of the claims that it's made as far as the medicinal use of marijuana and what effects it has, and we've heard the gambit, we all know through this process, okay, that this is, I don't know why we didn't figure this out millions of years ago, that this is the most wondrous drug that was ever developed naturally. And you can read through that process and provide to you that there's issues. I think the biggest thing for us to look at from a resource management issue is that the state's proposal of 18 different separate regulatory issues as it's related from cultivation through the process, regulatory to the sale, how is that going to be structured and where does the responsibility fall? And I think for me, we can go back and forth all day with experts on both sides on the use of marijuana and its benefits or the negative issues related to it, but I think the biggest discussion for us as a municipality is to have the discussion on the regulatory issue, how that's managed. Who will manage that? Who's going to be responsible for that? What will that do for us as far as resource management and the cost of that regulatory factor? As we can see what's already taking place with the state on a certain level with all kinds of things as it relates to incarceration, the amount of time people are, what they're going to be incarcerated for, all those issues, the state now is pushing things more down to the lower level, to this municipal level, and I'm seeing this may be the case for us as well. So while we can make the arguments back and forth, I think the discussion needs to keep going on as the state has not outlined that regulatory responsibility and how that will affect us on a local level. I think we need to keep an open mind as this develops further. I see that recently Kern County now has imposed a moratorium on cultivation and dispensaries, as well as the LA County and the city of Palmdale around us. So right now, we're in a situation where everything's on hold to regulatory-wise because no one knows where this is going to land. So I just want to keep the discussion ongoing. I think I'm going to keep bringing things forward each meeting as we develop that structure of how that looks for us as a city and what does the community really want as it relates to this issue.
And I'll just add a couple of things. Last week or the week before, one of the numerous legalization initiatives was submitted with, on the face of it, enough signatures to qualify for the ballot. But now the Secretary of State and the individual counties have to verify all of those signatures. That probably takes a month or so. I'm not exactly sure of the timing of that. So it may or may not qualify for the November ballot, and we'll keep you apprised of that. There are several additional legalization type initiatives that are still out for signature. It's virtually guaranteed that at least one of them will qualify for the November ballot. So all of this conversation about what we're going to do with medical marijuana may be completely moot if everything is legal, including recreational. The other thing, and this is just an aside, but the woman who was put in charge of the new regulatory body for medical marijuana and at the state level comes from the Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control. I think ABC does a great job in many ways. Oversight and enforcement, just speaking for myself, is not really their strong suit, frankly. So I have a little concern about how the regulation of medical marijuana is going to be handled at the state level.
And on that note for ABC, right now we supplement ABC with our Sheriff's Department resources to enforce their regulation within our community. So they have a minimal amount of officers that are assigned to that enforcement. So again, regularly we use our city resources through our contracted items through the Sheriff's Department to manage their program in our area. And I can see that would be the same issue here unless they're planning on hiring thousands of people statewide.
Jocelyn, I saw that same figure as far as the signatures going from 300 to 600, something like that. I read that same article and read the article on Kern County. Understand that, and I agree, ABC, and I've been involved with licenses in the past, and so has Mr. Harris and Jen. I think too, it goes towards the city who has to, regulate that and then report and do that, so it's an added burden. So I think their regulatory system, and I don't know if that'll ever get fixed at the state level, but it is an issue that's obviously going to be an active issue in our community. What's everyone think? Any discussion? We have a speaker card on MB2 speaker card, Mr. Christopher Clark. Welcome, Mr. Clark. How are you, sir?
All right.
Good, good.
How you guys doing? I'd just like to say that since the last time I talked, I've been going through it up and down with the shops that I do own. Out in Pear Blossom, because of the actions of another store, we had to close down. And that left me with a store in Roseman where we've been fighting, the county of Kern in a case. We just won our case, and that's why we're on the newspaper, and that's why they're putting on a hold right now. That was a short-lived victory because, yes, it allowed us to open our doors, but at the same time, it allowed other people to open their doors, and some of those people aren't, suited for this industry. And that goes to the lack of regulations in this industry. And I'd just like to thank you guys, all of you guys, for taking the conversation and moving forward and trying to bring regulations that will help this city and, help people that want medical marijuana. As far as the 18 laws, don't we have the option? Well, the city has the option to adopt their own ordinances. We don't have to abide by the 18 laws if we adopt our own ordinances and regulate, the industry how you guys see fit. I think that is something that you guys could come up with and help out. There's a lot of benefits to medical marijuana. It's been proven. I'd like to see more studies on it. People dissect, even more to find out, the actual benefits of it. But I just came up here really to say thank you for taking that step to move forward in this industry. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Anything else? Well, it seems to be, it's going to be a topic that we're going to have to address in as close we're getting, if it gets to the ballot. And it may not be a chance, right, Jocelyn? It may not get to the ballot.
It's possible that a number of those signatures won't be verifiable. I really think it's very likely that something is going to qualify. It's just my personal feeling.
I got to tell you, Mr. Drigger, what the stuff that you sent over, and this stuff was astonishing to me. And when you read some of these things, as far as electricity, the water,
1%,
the 1%, and I said something to somebody the other day said 1%. They go, what's 1%? I said, think about it. What 1% is.
Well, I could tell you the interesting things, because Pat and I, that's our background, and Randy as well, working in narcotics. Like at some of these huge marijuana grows that we dealt with, some of the discussion regulatory is like 5 acres for someone for cultivation for an individual. 5 acres is some of the things that we talk about the CCA. Does anyone have any idea how many marijuana plants can be grown on 5 acres? I mean, and how does that possibly become into a situation that's
Mark
beyond
does.
the scope? Mark, yeah, he might know.
Theoretically, I do.
Yeah, but even what we see in abandoned homes, okay, and jumping meters and all the other criminal activity that's associated with some of these grows, and I think we've all heard the stories. I mean, there's a significant impact on the public as far as the cost of dealing with some of these issues. So I believe in this thing is we just need to keep having the discussion, what's appropriate. But again, the state, once again, this is all over the map, regulatory-wise, and how that responsibility will fall. And that's the concern. Is where is that going to go? And in light of recent history with the state, that's a problem. That's a problem for us to be concerned about.
And also, too, when some of the stuff I was reading, too, as far as the free range, if they decided to do that, and we're opening up another issue when it comes to pesticides and spraying and everything else. Well, now that would happen, if that would happen, you're opening yourself up to another issue. So interesting. It was really interesting stuff I was reading.
Even beyond that, the big discussion right now is who has the expertise to manage people where do you determine the threshold for being under the influence? Okay, this is a giant problem for law enforcement as we come here, because then there's people trying to develop whatever their expertise is on at what point are their impairment. Well, people don't understand. You can be convicted of being under the influence under the state initiative standard for alcohol, if you can establish and articulate impairment. Well, the same thing applies here. I mean, so they're trying to come up with a higher threshold for law enforcement to make a determination that would already exist to determine if someone's under the influence of marijuana. Okay, wow. Which is, so we're fighting it on several fronts as far as this issue.
And in that regard, there was a story yesterday, and I've printed out the information, that AAA did a semi-longitudinal study of the impaired driving in the states that have legalized recreational marijuana in addition to medical marijuana. We'll take a look at, it's pretty hefty paperwork, so we'll be reading through that and distill it down and bring some statistics to you at the next meeting if you'd be interested in that.
Absolutely. Most definitely. Yeah. Any other discussion? Let's move forward. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Kip.
Morning, Commission.
Morning.
Deputy Kit Groupie here to present your crime stats and arrest stats for the City of Lancaster, LA County Sheriff's Department. So we are going to go ahead and start with the April CompStat, which also covers March on the graphs. Actually, and it won't show, we didn't have the March ComStat, but we do have April's. It won't show it on the actual total numbers, but it will show it on the graphs where they were last month. For violent crimes, we were at 106. Property crimes, 256. Total Part 1 crimes is 362. Violent crime arrests, 87. Property crime arrests, 51. With a total amount of arrests at 138. Earns issued was a total of 1,562. And then we'll go to the city total Part 1 crime counts by month to year comparison. We'll go from March of 2015 was at 355. In March of 16 we were at 341. April of 2015 at 346, and they are at 362 for the month of March. And by reporting district, your Part 1 crime counts in reporting district 1126 is 46. 1137 is 44. 1135 is 33. 1127 is 32. And 1132 is 30. And there's City of Lancaster Part 1 crime hotspot areas for April of 2016.
Where's the 1126 again?
RD 1126?
Yeah.
Okay, it's going to be basically on the west side, basically from 10th Street West to 20th West.
Got it.
If you see on your hotspot map there.
It's difficult to see it here.
Okay.
But it's okay, yeah.
And the darker areas are obviously you're very high, and then as it gets lighter, it goes to none. We can move on to the residential burglaries for April. Reporting District 1135 has a count of 9. 1126 is a count of 6. And reporting District 1121 is 5. Then your target area and spots of where these residential burglaries occurred through the city. Your robberies for April of 2016 in reporting District 1132 is 5. 1122 is 3. And 1135 is 3. And your map for April of 2016 of where those robberies occurred. Go to there we go, homicides over a period of a year. The average is 1. It started there in May, and we're at April. We are actually at 2. Then we'll go to rapes over a period of a year. And your average is 7 throughout the year. We're at 8 for April of 2016. Our robberies over a period of a year, April 2016, from May of 2015 to April of 2016, we're just above, we're under 30. The average is 28 for April of 2016, if you see over there on the right of the screen. Aggravated assaults over a period of a year, the average is 51. In May of 2015, we were just under 70, and right now we're April of 2016, just at 70. The average burglaries over a period of a year is 110. In May of 2015, we were at 100, and we are now in April of 2016, approximately about 70, if you see on the right of your screen. Larceny thefts is going to be, the average is 161. April of 2016, we're probably about 140 right now, 130 to 140 on that graph to the right of your screen. Grand theft vehicles over a period of year. We had a spike in January, but we're down from that spike. Our average is 47. We're just above it, probably around 49 for April of 2016. The arsons over a period of a year, the average is 5. We're right at our average at 5 right now for April of 2016. And then your City of Lancaster Part 1 frequency by reporting district. If you look at your legend count, which I don't know if yours is in color or not to the commission, you can see 0 to 1 for the darkest. As it gets to the red, it goes from 25 to 41. Let's move on to the March crime stats, and let me help you real quick.
Kip, real quick.
Yes, sir.
Just something. What are we doing as far as getting down the, or how are we handling possibly getting down the grand theft vehicles and aggregated assaults over this period? It seems like they spiked, or is there something that has sparked it? And
No,
what can we do to get the numbers down?
We currently we have a gang realignment grant. Basically, that's providing extra saturation patrol and investigative resources through Operation Safe Streets Bureau, which we've been using, and that's good through the end of the fiscal year. As far as the GTAs go, yeah, there is an increase. Most of the increase on those cars is the Honda and Acura types of vehicles, highly targeted. Through talking with the detective that handles these vehicle thefts and grand theft autos, 85% of these vehicles are being recovered. So with that, yes, it's bumping them up. They are being recovered, and it's mainly it's those Hondas and the Acura vehicles. There is something through talking and resources. I don't want to go into details. There's a project that we are working on. Details would probably have a negative effect on the productivity of what's going on with the project as far as...
There's been grant funds that you said that, yeah.
For the gang realignment, for those aggravated assaults, yes.
If I might add a little bit, the aggravated assault stats are often skewed because of the way that they are tracked by the FBI. If we have an incident, for instance, a gang party where a rival gang fires into a home full of partygoers, everybody in that house represents a victim, which is accurate, but it also counts as a separate aggravated assault. So if you have a party with 60 partygoers, that may result in as high as 60 aggravated assaults being added to your Part 1 crime count. Aggravated assaults in and of themselves are difficult to do a lot of, other than the gang saturation patrols are difficult to control because so many of those aggravated assaults are domestic issues between family members. Frequently there's alcohol or some type of mind-altering drug involved. Frequently mental crises that occur, and they're really difficult to do anything proactively to prevent. As far as the auto thefts go, like Kit said, our primary losses seem to be Hondas and Toyotas. That's been that way for 10 or 15 years or more. When I worked patrol here, Toyotas and Hondas were the number one stolen cars even back then, and I don't want to tell you how long ago that was. The theft of those vehicles is very simple because of the fact that, especially the older ones, don't really take much to steal. A shaved key will get you into, over half of any of them if you have the properly shaved key, if you will, in the older styles. The only way to really combat those particular types of crimes are probably public information efforts through, public service announcements and that kind of things. To have people keep their vehicles locked. Frequently they're not. To keep their vehicles less accessible wherever possible. And it may be worth adding, obviously, some type of a secondary, either an alarm system or a kill switch where, that shave key is not going to be the final step to getting rid of the car. And like Kit also said, probably 85% of them are recovered. In this particular valley, they're frequently, seemingly anyway, stolen just for transportation to go from, say, Lancaster to Palmdale, and then there's another one, unfortunately, stolen in Palmdale and brought back up here. The vast majority are recovered without having been stripped or burned or anything, but unfortunately that's also a component of the auto thefts up here is arsons that follow those to cover up whatever evidence may have been recovered. So
it's too bad we couldn't have an exchange program with the city of Palmdale. Take it to Palmdale, bring it back, So, thank you, Captain. So, that's right. That's right. Thank you, Captain.
All right, we're going to move on to the March statistics, arrest stats for the city of Lancaster and LA County Sheriff's Department. The burglary suppression team for the month of March had 16 felony arrests and 3 misdemeanor arrests, 1 parole probation arrest, 13 felony warrant arrests, 4 misdemeanor warrant arrests, and 1 vehicle recovered. Ramey warrants 2, parole probation searches 5, and the monetary value of recovered stolen property was $8,900, with a one firearm was recovered and 13 burglaries were solved. For narcotics, for patrol, 33 felony arrests were made, 26 misdemeanor arrests, 1 juvenile, 1,044 grams of marijuana were recovered, methamphetamine powder in the form of grams, 5,110, and 84 grams of cocaine. For the land cap team, 37 felony arrests for the month of March, 14 misdemeanor arrests with 6 firearms recovered. And the estimated value of illegal narcotics and monetary value was $85,106. Move on to the April arrest statistics for Lancaster Station. The burglary suppression team had 26 felony arrests with 3 misdemeanor arrests, 1 parole probation arrest, 1 felony warrant arrest, 4 misdemeanor warrant arrests, and 9 vehicles were recovered. 2 Ramey warrants and 13 parole probation searches. Recovered, the monetary value of recovered stolen property was $160,325, with 4 firearms recovered and 7 assault burglaries. narcotics, we'll start with patrol. 30 felony arrests, 1 juvenile arrest, 35 misdemeanor narcotics-related arrests with 3 juveniles, 826 grams of marijuana were recovered, 238 grams of methamphetamine, and 3.74 grams of cocaine. For the narcotics crew, 4 felony arrests, 2 misdemeanor arrests with 28.7 grams of marijuana, just under a gram of methamphetamine. And that's it for the April narcotics stats for the station. We can move forward to the land cap team. For the month of April, had 48 felony arrests, 9 misdemeanor arrests. They recovered 2 firearms, and the estimated monetary value of illegal narcotics recovered was $88,270. I don't have it up. There we go. We do have it. It was part of it. So I just want to brief LEAPS real quick for the summary of April 2016. LEAPS directly supported the Sheriff's Department, Lancaster Station, with 11 arrests and the surveillance of 243 locations with 42.5 hours of total dispatch time. Of the 243 surveillance events, the station formally logged 54 service calls where LEAPS supported tactical field operations. The reduced service calls supported in April was attributed to the weather and limited data after the 19th of April. So, and then if you can move forward to the chart. And do you have a colored version in front of you? No? Okay. If you look at the pie, the green kind of turquoise is the suspicious circumstances of what they respond to and fly over. Notable would be like man with a gun, fire calls, and I'll get you guys a color version if you don't have one so you can see, but there's just a LEAPS statistics chart. And then if we can move forward, just want to add that Lancaster Sheriff Station, for all the community members, folks of the city, we're going to be hosting an open house Saturday, May 21st from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., 501 West Lancaster Boulevard. We'll have several different programs, including the city public safety will be there to answer questions. We'll have share tolerance, recruitment. So come on out. We'll be giving station tours. Parking for that event will be across the street, directly east of Lancaster Station on Sierra Highway, just north of the Jet on the corner of, it's going to be basically the northeast corner of Sierra Highway and Lancaster Boulevard. If folks like to park there. And we'd love to have you. So that's it for my Crime Commission presentation. Any other questions?
Thank you, Kip.
Okay.
Thanks, Kip.
Thank you.
Job. Great job. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. California Highway Patrol.
Good morning. Unfortunately, so far this year, our fatal collisions are up. This year we've had 11. As compared with last year, we only had 7 at this point. There were 4 that involved people that weren't wearing their seat belts. But other than that, there's not really a lot of pattern to the fatal collisions. They're kind of scattered all over our area that we cover, which is unincorporated area, as well as the 14 freeway. Our crashes are up across the board. This year we've had 213 injury collisions, whereas last year we had only had 156 at this point. So that's a 36% increase. Same with property damage only collisions. This year 317 so far, where we only had 235 last year. That's up 35% as well. DUI traffic collisions, we've had 46. Last year we had only had 37. 24% increase. Our DUI arrests are up. We had 172 so far this year, 155 last year. That's an 11% increase. Statewide DUI arrests are down 11%. But I think here in the Antelope Valley, we're doing what we can do to prevent it. Our patrol hours overall are down 16% over last year, and that's primarily due just to being a little bit understaffed. We've got some injuries and people that are trying to recover, but we're doing the best we can with what we have, and we've made progress in a lot of the areas. The fatals is something that we're definitely working on, we're concerned about. We're trying to run more statistics and deploy our people in the areas that we feel we can have the most impact, but it's difficult when we look at the maps and see that everything's kind of scattered all over the entire valley as far as where these things are taking place. But that's all I have.
Any questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. Jocelyn?
I'm sorry, I don't have anything in addition to what we spoke about earlier.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'm sorry. Mr. Franklin, I apologize.
Good morning. Going through the filings through the month of April of this year, we filed 287 felony complaints, and for the year, that's 970. That's about on par, to give you a reference point, about on par, a little bit more than San Fernando, and a little bit more than, actually a little bit less than Compton. So we're, as far as apples to apples, we're very close to San Fernando, and then in Van Nuys in our filings and for the year. We for misdemeanors, we filed the most in the county, and that's 532 for this month, and then a year to date, 2,257. So we continue to file a good amount of misdemeanors. One thing I did want to bring to your attention as well, which is the Public Safety and Rehabilitation Act that you've heard me speak of several times before. There was a state Supreme Court hearing on May 5th, I believe, and the decision hasn't come out yet, but the pundits that I've listened to, as well as something I pulled off a news service, indicated that, and I'll just read you the very first paragraph, which is just a couple lines. It says, although district attorneys have criticized California's Governor Jerry Brown for dodging election laws in this overreaching bid to reform prison sentencing through voter approval, the governor received a jolt of support Thursday from a California Supreme Court panel. And apparently most of the questions from the state Supreme Court were very favorable to the governor. Originally, as you may or may not know, this was a proposal to go to the ballot, which was to make it where juveniles could no longer be prosecuted as an adult unless the judge authorized it, as opposed to the district attorney direct filing a case. For instance, I'm handling a case right now where a 14-year-old murdered a 82-year-old lady. We just direct filed it, and then originally it was going to, the law was to be, nope, a judge has to do it. We don't trust the prosecutors to do that. Then what ended up happening is the governor attached all this additional prison overcrowding language onto that ballot without it being properly vetted, essentially gutting 3 strikes and so forth, with the estimates that if it passes, it'll be anywhere up to 40,000 prisoners released. So it's a long way of saying that what it appears is that the court is going to allow this to go on the November ballot. So it's something I think clearly the Criminal Justice Commission needs to keep an eye on, and take a position on. I know that one of my DAs, Dennis Vincent, met with some of the members, and I believe Mr. DeRico and Ms. Corbett, and I think that might be valuable in the future. So to do that, and that would conclude my presentation.
Just to comment on that too. Thank you, Mr. Franklin, for bringing that forward. The scary part of this is that there's no compounding in sentencing or consideration. So part of the bill is it doesn't matter if you've been arrested and been a career criminal versus of someone that is a first offender. The sentencing is the similar structure. Gang enhancements, weapons, all those things go out the door. Okay, so, you know, in looking in light on over 60,000 former state prisoners who have been released back into the community, along with the fact that you can currently be homeless and be on parole, is an interesting situation. Now we're even stepping to a point where we have those individuals that have earned the time that they're getting based on their history is going to be taken out. And that's a huge issue.
That's absolutely correct. That is what's going to happen.
That's crazy.
And if I could just add, that initiative was allowed to go out for signatures pending the hearing before the state Supreme Court. I'm tracking that bill, and I believe I got an email 3 or 4 weeks ago to indicate that it had reached allegedly the 25% mark of the signatures needed to qualify for the ballot. Again, still kind of a pretty high threshold to meet by June 30th to get, I believe it's 450,000, I think, for a constitutional amendment initiative. So I'll keep you apprised of the status of that.
Some scary stuff out there.
Anything else? That's amazing, and that's just scary. Mr. Franklin, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. DeRico?
Yes, just a couple things. I put out for your information and provided you an article on SPICE, and Mr. Cook will probably be discussing some things that have recently occurred with Senator Runner. It's pretty interesting to read through this process, and we can talk about, and you've probably seen recently just issues with the homeless population, especially in Los Angeles, where individuals are being poisoned by these cannabinoids, as well as the huge issue we're having with our youth in the community is this, and the symptomatic behavior it creates, and all kinds of issues. So that's just, again, further for your own information. I want to talk about the Spring Neighborhood Watch General Meeting coming up on May 19th, right here at City Hall. I'd like to invite you to come to that meeting. We'll send out the time and everything here, and it's a good general meeting where we bring a number of the neighborhood watch groups in, and that program continues to expand. And as we've done more outreach with media sources and like Cinemark and all those things, we've reached out and getting a lot of interest as it relates to growing that program. Also, I'd just like to just say, I mean, with all the things that are going on right now as it relates to what law enforcement's up against, what our elected officials are up against, as far as making our city safe, I think based on, especially a report that's put out by the Sheriff's Department based on the deputy sheriffs that work our particular station and their self-initiated activity, the support they receive from the community here, we're probably different than a lot of other places. And I think that's something to make noteworthy for our constituency out there, that, we care about what's happening out there. And I think interesting things that are out there just for the public to make themselves more aware. It would be interesting now for people to Google information as it relates to rental housing or things as it relates to federal comments about disparaging remarks by calling people felons or convicts, or things that of the nature of almost determining whether or not at some point in society are people who are involved in criminal behavior going to become some type of protected class. And that's a gigantic issue right now that probably needs to have more discussion just for the knowledge of the public of some of the things and directions they're going. And that's very fearful in light of what's occurred in the last 7 or 8 years with legislation and things as well. So it's just having a huge compounding effect on the ability of all those folks that are involved in protecting our community to do their job without, and then the villainization of law enforcement right now is a huge issue just for recruitment. And that's become a giant issue that the sheriff is speaking about right now. Okay, getting folks that actually want to come out and do the job.
Had that had a meeting this morning, and Captain Nelson brought that to the sheriff board this morning. It was absolutely incredible, the issue that they found out. And you're on that, and so is Jen, and Lisa, but it's just recruitment is, wow. Makes you think about it.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you, Lee. Rick, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Little, Commission, and staff, and Vice Mayor Marvin Christ. I provided you with a list of the current bills that are going through from the Senator Runner's office, but I would like you to pay attention to page 3, which is SB 1367. This is the issue that was brought forth from the city of Lancaster. I want to thank Lee and Jocelyn for their hard work in getting this bill working on this so we could get it presented at the Senate. It has received overwhelmingly support from the California State Senate, with the last vote in May 2nd to move to the Assembly with 38 ayes and 0 no votes on this. It is now in the Assembly. It has been read for the first time on May 3rd, and hopefully it'll continue to move forward without any issues. But this is essentially, you could call this the City of Lancaster bath salt bill, because you're the ones that brought it forth to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Any questions? All righty. This is part of when we will address any non-agenda items from the floor that's not on the agenda. People have right to fill out a speaker card, and you're limited to 3 minutes to address the commission. I have some speaker cards here. Maria Pazano.
Before my time starts, could I
Maria,
ask you, since there was no...
Your time started, Maria.
Okay, there you go. I'm here to talk about some things that happened, and I am actually wanting to talk about these crimes and any kind of recovery or money to get back from all this that's happened: assaults, robbery, grand theft, theft by access card, sexual assaults, arsons, forgeries, vandalism, identity thefts, false reports, murders, kidnappings. When I look over and see the reports that were made, it seems like those are the reports they're telling you that they have done, because I have actual personal experience with that. I've come before you before and talked about what had happened when my home was taken, my vehicle was taken, assaults that have happened and that keep happening, that are still continuing. When my home was taken the last time, I was unable to make police reports like I told you, and it was because I was told that Lee had told them that I was not allowed to come in and make any kind of reports at all, and if I did, I'd be arrested or worse, and it did get worse. It got way worse. My home was actually broken into, kicked in. I was being extorted. Like, if I didn't give things up, this was going to happen to me. We're going to get, people to beat me up, which I did. I had to go to the hospital. My ear and everything got hurt. The last time when my vehicle was taken, I was calling in trying to find out. My daughter was missing, and I was trying to find her. And on the phone, I could hear her screaming. I had called and tried to get help, but I kept getting phone calls saying that I had mental health issues and that I needed to drive out and meet the people out there, the police. And I told them I didn't want to do that I was fine, that wasn't the problem. Just my daughter was missing, and we needed water. And instead, I was thrown up against the car and arrested. My vehicle was taken, which was the 2002 series, that so much money was given for that. I was put in the back seat of the police vehicle. And this all had to do also with some situations with the church next door that was going on, where they were like hurting people over there, and I went over there to try and help that situation, where they were knocking people down and assaulting them. And also there was some youth pregnancy problems. some other situations over there. And that started a whole thing with them not wanting me to be over there next to the place. If I could please continue.
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I was also here for my dog.
Ms. Pisano, thank you very much. Thank you.
Vehicle was hit 3 times.
Joseph Aiken.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joseph, and I'm a resident here in Lancaster. And I wanted to talk about the increase in smoke shops that I've seen in the last few months here. I mentioned this the first time I spoke about this, and because I see a direct connection with increasing juvenile crime and delinquency and things like cutting school and regard with these tobacco stores. And my biggest concern is I see a lot of them near elementary schools and the AV high school, and the street that I live on. Actually, the youth have been for a few months back. They were breaking into our houses and our cars, and I see a direct connection with the increase of these places. And I wanted to know how the city can assist me with that. I don't think those things should be like near schools and in residential areas near kids.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, Mr. Aiken, thank you. And I do know that the city's been working very hard on smoke shops and an ordinance and pulling it in.
All right.
So exactly, thank you for bringing it to our attention because the city is addressing that.
Okay.
Yeah, and those are all issues that the city's diving hard into. So,
Okay.
But thank you, sir,
All right.
for bringing it to our attention because keep bringing it back because we like it.
One question: is there anywhere I can get some information about what the city's doing in regards to that?
Mr. Drico?
I'd be happy to meet with you. We discussed that before, and I'd be happy to meet with you anytime and have that discussion, and we can talk about some of the things that we've looked at. I will tell you there's a vetting process now as it relates to that.
Oh, what now?
And a vetting process
vetting.
for the individuals that are involved in that. That was brought through this commission as well as went to the city council.
Okay.
But yes, it is an issue here.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Aiken. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, Maria Conjamian? Did I pronounce that correct? Kujamanian. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. Yeah, my name is Maria, and I'm concerned about the homeless here in Lancaster. I don't have anything against them because I myself was homeless in 2007 when I lost my job. But I went to San Francisco, went to school, and I got my life together. I was reading the newspaper that 60% of the homeless people here in Lancaster, 30% are mentally ill. And I want to know why can't we help these mentally ill, put them in hospital, medicate them, and the rest they're criminals and doing dope and breaking into houses. Do something with them. If they're using dope, let's put them in Tarzana and get them some help. We should not allow them to roam our streets and harass people. I mean, the mayor's wife can't even come and have a cup of coffee in Lancaster Boulevard because she's afraid of the criminals, you know. I myself would like to come in Lancaster Boulevard, have a cup of coffee and enjoy it, you know. And, but I can't do that anymore, you know, because they harass me. Outside, I have to have Mr. Aiken with me 24/7. I hired him to work for me. He's working for me for 5 years because I'm afraid outside. But I love Lancaster. I moved here from San Francisco. I support the church here in Lancaster 100%. I think they're doing a great job in the community. And I want the Spanish-speaking community to support the church here in Lancaster because they're really protecting our families here in Lancaster. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a remark on that is that the city's taken a pro stance and the Vice Mayor, Mr. Christ, has spearheaded a long thing with the county in fighting this type of situation, getting the National Lottery funds, and is making huge inroads as far as getting that to to the city of Lancaster, and they're looking at different avenues, so they're working hard on it. So thanks to his efforts. So thank you. Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Commissioner comments, anything?
No.
No? Well, with that being said, Mr. Moore, anything? Nothing? You're good? You're good? Flying around, everything's good? Good. Thank you, sir. With that, we'll adjourn to next regular meeting, June 8th at 10 a.m.